Good morning, everyone. Kind of a good morning. I'm a little tired, but that's okay. BlueTruth, Rangers Talk with Brian Attard, live with a very special guest today. 18 years in the NHL, played for a number of teams, including our Rangers. Currently an analyst with ESPN and ABC with the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Ray Ferraro, gracious enough to join the show today. Ray, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. I am, we're into our first week of the playoffs, and we're just getting into the meat of it, right? All the series are now 3 games in, so everything kind of clicks into another gear. And this is the best time. It's the best time of year.
Well, I listened to something the other day. They said the first round is really the best round because everybody's still fresh. That the NHL playoffs are so much of a grind that as you get further and further along, I mean, yeah, you're getting the better teams, but everybody's hurt all the time. And it's just, that's the nature of the Stanley Cup. They were comparing it to the NBA playoffs where guys get like 2-3 days off between games sometimes. And that's not hockey. Hockey's every other day. So
yeah, it's a wild thing to be involved with. When I was with the Islanders in '93, we went to the conference final, and I at some point in there, I would say late second round, early third round, it felt like we were playing endlessly. Like there was no break, and you were so excited to play, and like your body just, you could feel it starting to lose gas. You're like, I don't have much left. And we won 9 games that year to get to the conference final. We were barely over half.
Yeah.
Like that last year in the finals, we're doing the game 6 in Tampa, and we so happened to be staying in the same hotel as Colorado. And in the morning of game 6, Val Nichushkin comes through the lobby. He's wearing one shoe and a Marriott slipper. And we're like, that can't be good. Like, how is he going to get his foot in his skate?
Yeah.
He literally couldn't get his shoe on. And he played that night and they won the cup. It's a crazy grind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're both biased, but it is the best. It is the best playoffs in all sports. Like I don't know how anybody can even if you don't like hockey, you gotta like, out of the game last night, obviously it went to overtime. I mean, like it's back and forth. It could end at any minute. There's nothing like that. So it's a wonderful.
Yeah, game. The overtimes are incredible to be in, because even sitting on the bench, there are times you're like, like your heart's in your throat because they got a chance and our goalie stopped it, or they missed the net, and now we got a chance, and even in a game last night where there wasn't a lot of room, there was lots of portions to it where there could have been 4 or 5 more goals. Mm-hmm. And there was a stretch in overtime where it got sloppy, and like you can't rein it in. It's like it's a chance here, it's a chance there. It's somebody drops a stick and it's chaos. And that is the best time because anything really can happen.
The back and forth is just like, and you're there and it's like, everybody's standing, like you can't even sit down. It's
right.
Hockey's wonderful. So I wanted to start today with the story of how this actually happened. So, obviously social media is good and bad. Right. So there's pros and cons to it. And I had come across a video of you being semi-critical of the Ranger power play, kind of, too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, I guess would be the way to kind of look at it. And, I had tweeted, well, that's because Ray hates the Rangers. And to your credit, you sent me a message. You're like, I don't hate the Rangers. I don't care who wins and loses. And I love going to MSG. And I said, well, to be fair, a lot of Ranger fans feel as though you do have a bias against them. I said, listen, if you'd like to come talk to them, let them know how you feel. I have a platform. You're welcome to come on. And, here we are today. So I just wanted to start there. I wanted you to bust the myths that are out there that people in Rangerland think that for literally a variety of reasons, they think you just hate the Rangers. So I wanted to let you tell them how wrong they are.
Well, it's going to be impossible to bust the myths because people are going to think what they're going to think. And so let's say there's 3,000 Ranger fans that hate the way I do the game because they think I'm biased against the Rangers. I can't change the way I broadcast for 3,000 people. There's 1 million people watching. on ABC. Like I've never been told how to broadcast. I've never been told you should say this, don't say that. I don't do a local broadcast. Like Sam and Joe are beloved because they're fantastic at what they do, like fantastic. And they do everything from the Ranger perspective. I don't do that. If the Ranger power play sucks, I'm going to tell you why I think it sucks. And I did score 100 power play goals in the same league. So I probably got a decent idea why that does or does not happen. If the Devils power play sucks, like it has for most of the series, I talked about why it does. I think they have trouble getting inside. I don't think they're big enough. Look, I'm 5'9" on my very best day. So I know what it's like to be a small player trying to get inside the dots beyond Jacob Trouba and Keandre Miller. And it's almost impossible, but you have to fight for it. So to the Ranger thing, I think you would be really hard pressed to find someone that cares less who wins than me. Like that's got nothing to do with my job. My job's to watch, to take my experience of playing for 18 years. Now, this is 21 years of broadcasting. So it's 39 years around this league. Take those experiences and try and help the viewer understand or enjoy a little bit more of the game. I get it. Some people want me to talk about how great the Rangers are all the time, but sometimes they're not. Like that's just the way the game is. My job's to have a yin and a yang to it, that you talk about the good, you talk about the bad. I'm always respectful, always, of how hard the game is. Like the game is bloody hard. And great players make really bad plays. And it's because you get a tenth of a second to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the right one, sometimes it's not, but you can't stop. They got to keep going. And that's the same for me. I have to point out why it was a bad decision and maybe what they could have done, but I'm always respectful of what those guys do because it's so hard. Yeah. It's so hard to play at this level.
And plus, anybody who's watching the game, we can say, oh, why didn't they do that? It's like, well, we have also a minute and a half to think about it. They have a split second to make that decision. So
okay, I'll give you an example. My first playoffs, I'm playing for Hartford, so it's barely on TV in those days. And it's in overtime. We have to win game 6 to send it to game 7. It's 0-0. It's in overtime. I get a pass at our blue line. I'm standing still, and my winger is going up the other side of the ice, the far side. He's wide open. If I can get it to him, he's going to have a scoring chance. Even though I'm at my blue line, there's so much ice over there, he's gone. I fire this pass across right on the tape of Mats Naslund, who unfortunately plays for Montreal. And he's got a breakaway 60 feet in. There's nobody else there. And Mike Liut stops it. We end up winning later on a Kevin Dineen goal. I remember that split second of making that pass. It was in my mind, the right play. It couldn't have been worse. And as soon as the puck's off my stick, I'm like, I want to take it back, but I can't because all of a sudden I see him. And so just a illustration maybe of how when you're on the ice, like you think it's the right play and it is for a minute.
Yeah.
Until it's not.
Yeah. It's the right play because you didn't see the better one because you were
there's a way better one all the time.
Yeah. Comments coming in. Jennifer K. Good morning. Let's go Rangers. Jonathan Riggs, Chicken Parm. Tony Quigley, Ray is definitely my favorite person on this show. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it.
You got the support, do you?
Yeah. Hi, Ray. I'm glad you're on some games and Pierre Maguire isn't. Paulie, most hockey players respect most hockey players. Says you're okay with me, Ray. So I wanted to get into, a little bit about, your career. So you were drafted by Hartford.
That's
Young
a good
buck right there.
flow, eh? Look at that flow, huh?
7 years as a Whaler, really solid offensive numbers. You had 30 goals as a 21-year-old. You put up 41 and 88, 89. Look at that flow right there. Look at that.
That's a long time ago. It doesn't
it's not
take that anymore, I'll tell you.
Father time catches up to us all. What would you say it was like playing in Hartford? I know you had moved on, obviously, when they ended up leaving and going to Carolina, but what were you sad to see them leave? And then also just your thoughts on the Hurricanes using those jerseys now, which by the way, one of the best logos in sports. It's really unfortunate that team moved, but just thoughts on, like, should they even be using Whaler jerseys? Maybe I'm overthinking that. But
well, I'll start back to get, I was drafted in the 5th round. That draft for the Whalers really was transformative in that they drafted Kevin Dineen in the 3rd round. I got it wrong. Ulf Samuelsson in the 3rd round, Kevin Dineen in the 4th round, me in the 5th round. Like, that's a pretty good draft.
Mm-hmm.
They had Ron Francis 2 years earlier. We made a trade for Dean Evison from Washington. We had Paul McDermott, but we were all, outside of Ronnie, in the American League together. And so we all grew up in the NHL together. There was like 7 or 8 of us that played the first 7 years of our career together. We were all young, single, and stupid. And then we were married, and then we had kids, and our team was growing. And Hartford was, it's hard to remember this, but Hartford was a pretty vibrant city. The insurance industry was king. There, the city was humming with that economic engine. And then, poof, it all left and went to New Jersey. They had some tax breaks or something or other. And all of a sudden it changed the entire dynamic of what Hartford was. I loved living there. I loved playing there. And then when I got traded, I went to the Islanders. They left shortly after to Carolina. It felt like they had run out of racetrack there. And it was sad because that was, that's the place I connect to growing up in the league. As far as I didn't like when Carolina first started using the uniforms, mainly because they had done everything they could to disassociate themselves from Hartford.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just moving, it was everything else past that. And then all of a sudden they're wearing these jerseys because they're not stupid. They see an economic positivity to this. You mentioned the logo. It is the greatest logo, I think. Take a look at that logo. So we played in the American League in Binghamton. Okay, so Brian, I'm sure you can make a visual of the logo. Turn it on its side, and it's a B. And so we always said we were a quarter turn from the NHL. If we could just turn that thing one more time, we were there. And so they put the first time they had the uniforms in Carolina, I hated it. Second time, I hated it a little less. Now I'm kind of proud that they wear it because that's our team, our logo. And it does look, I think it looks awesome. And in third jerseys, why I like it so much, I think it's so different than the ones they wear on a regular basis, the white and red. And I think you look at it and you go, oh, who is that for a second? And then you go, oh yeah, it's Carolina. And I really like it.
It does stand out when they have home games because everybody's wearing red in the crowd.
Yes.
And it looks like it's like Christmas, you get a little green in there.
It really is. It's a stark difference for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned that you were traded from Hartford to the Islanders for defenseman Doug Crossman. When you were there, you again were continued to be a solid producer. You had 40 goals in 91-92, a couple other 20-goal years after that, including the run that you guys made to the conference finals where you were key to the success. You had 2 overtime winners that year against the Caps. It's going back now. Did you want to be traded from Hartford, or was it just Hartford was looking to do something different and wanted a defenseman maybe instead of a forward? Because you still thrived when you went to the Islanders. So it wasn't you, I don't think.
No, I had no idea that I was being traded. This is the day before cell phones. So I got home after practice and there's a message on the answering machine, which I'm sure a lot of people are too young to have, and that red light flashing on the machine, and so I get a message from Eddie Johnson, who was our general manager, from his assistant, and she says, Ray, call Eddie when you get a chance. Here's the number. So I just got home from the rink, and I'm like, well, this isn't good, right? Like, he's not calling to see what I'm having for lunch, right? Like, I got a pretty good idea. So I call, she answers, says, oh, Ray, he just stepped out for lunch. So I'm like, okay. She goes, he'll call you when he gets back. So I'm sitting in my kitchen by myself, and I have a copy of the hockey news. So I open up the hockey news, and I'm looking at which teams need a centerman. Like, I'm trying to place myself now because I'm sure that I'm traded. So half an hour later, the phone rings, and it's Bill Torrey from the New York Islanders. He says, Ray, Bill Torrey here. I said, oh, Bill, I guess I'm coming to the Islanders. And he goes, you don't know yet? And I said, no, EJ went out for lunch. He said, I'll say. And he was pissed. And so I hang up. I wait for Eddie to call. Traded you to the Islanders. Everything happened so fast after that. I went the next morning to get my gear. I had to fly to Calgary to meet the team. I didn't know anybody. I got a speeding ticket on the way back in Hartford from the rink to my house. The policeman let me off. He said,
"Look, doesn't he know who you are?"
He went. He said, I go, look, man, I just got traded. And he goes, yeah, I know. I read about it. He's like, look, just slow down and good luck in New York. And poof, and I took off. So I didn't know, however, how much that trade was needed for me. I'd gotten into a little bit of a rut. There was a new coach there, Rick Lee, who didn't particularly care for the way I played. I didn't particularly care for the way he coached. And, we didn't get along. But the trade was a shock. It was a surprise. I went to New York and I played for the great Al Arbor. And I know, we're on our Ranger fans, are listening here, but one of the greatest people I've ever met in the game. Al was the best. He turned my career when I needed it. He called me the Seagull because he said if I wasn't shitting, I was talking. And apparently that's what seagulls do. I don't know, but so he'd come in, he'd go, "Morning, Seagull," and he had that deep voice. And man, I just loved it there. I played with a couple of ex-Rangers who became Rangers, Glenn Healy and Pat Flatley, two of my favorite teammates of all time. And we just had a great group of guys. And somehow we made it to the semifinals the one year, the conference finals. And that was completely unexpected for all of us. For myself, I missed 3 months that year. I broke my leg and dislocated my ankle, and came back 6 games before the playoffs, and played 3 games really poorly. And Al called me in and he said, "Seagull, you got 3 games to get going or you'll be sitting with Claire." And Claire was his wife. and he said, "And she's been in the same damn seats for 23 years. And so I'm standing in his office and he goes, "Do you need anything else?" And I said, "Nope." So I turned around and he gave me 3 games to get going, and I played better. And then I went on, I scored 13 goals in the playoffs. And, but man, I love the man. He was just an amazing, amazing communicator and coach.
Rivalry aside, you have to recognize all-time greats. I mean, it's the wonderful of the sport. I have a special request from one of my most frequent viewers named Mike Epstein, who I think plays some kind of, beer league hockey there. And he wants you to say Mike Epstein scores. This is the closest to the NHL I will ever get.
That's good. Hey, okay. Now, do we know what position Mike Epstein's?
It might be left bench, but he also might be, might be some kind of a forward.
Okay. Rangers enter the zone and the puck comes over to Epstein. He wires a terrific shot over the goalie's glove. Now, this is unexpected. Epstein never shoots from that distance, mainly because he can't. But this time he beats the goaltender, who's the most surprised guy in the building.
Mike Epstein, big goal. So following the time that you spent with the Islanders, you did join our Rangers. You signed there in the summer of 95 after the lockout shortened season. And, that team was still like the core of the 94 team that had won it all. And you had very good numbers, when you were in New York. You had 25 goals, 29 assists, and 54 points in 65 games. And it was midway through, I guess, that season that you were traded to the LA Kings. And I went back and I looked at the terms of that deal. Now, you went with a number of players. It was like a 7-player deal. From a purely production standpoint, right? The 3 guys that they brought in, which were Shane Churla, who was obviously not a goal scorer, Yari Curry, who was at the end of his career, and Marty McSorley, not a goal scorer. They scored a combined 1 goal the remainder of that season, whereas you 4, 2, and 6 in 11 games, and then potted 25 the next year for LA. So might be a trade the Rangers might want to have back. Not really the best asset management, in my opinion. Feels like, looking back, they were still collecting ex-Oilers, and you were the piece the Kings wanted, rightfully so. But, just your thoughts on playing with the Rangers. You shared with me that one of your Ranger teammates was the best player you ever played with, which I'm sure the viewers would love to hear.
Yeah, I signed with the Rangers when I agreed to the deal with the Rangers. I was actually in Dallas, talking to Dallas. I was a free agent that year. There was not many free agents at the time. The rules hadn't quite changed yet. And I became a free agent. So Dallas and the Rangers reached out. I went down to Dallas and was looking around, and my wife at the time was there. And, we were thinking this was somewhere to go. When the Rangers called, I felt the Rangers were closer to a Stanley Cup than Dallas was. Now, Dallas had just missed the playoffs, and as it turned out, I was completely wrong in my analysis because Dallas went to the finals and the Rangers went into this other period.
The dark times, we call them around here.
Okay, so I get to New York, and there's ups and downs to the season, like all seasons. But I had 25 goals. I was doing what I felt I was supposed to do. I don't think your analysis of collecting Oilers is too far wrong. I mean, there's a trust there that they had from winning their Stanley Cups. I get it. But when Colin Campbell called my house just before dinner time, and my now 32-year-old son Landon picked up the phone and said, "Dad, it's Colin." I'm like, "Oh boy, I've had this call before." And I couldn't have been more disappointed, upset. I was sour that I got traded. And then as far as the deal, man, they traded Matty Nordstrom in that deal. What a colossal blunder. Like he was as hard-nosed as you could have. He was a playoff player. They just didn't know it yet. Matty played 10 years in LA. He was rock solid. Ian LaPerriere was in that deal, and Nathan Lafayette as well. So I go to LA, and I would say I was disillusioned. I was disappointed. I get to LA. They had just traded Wayne. He had gone to St. Louis. It was kind of like getting to a New Year's Eve party at 12:30. Like all the good stuff was gone, and you're just kind of hanging around. And so they were rebuilding in LA, and it was it became a real tough period for me personally. I hurt my knee. Actually, Jeff Bukaboom hit me in the garden here, and I ended up tearing a meniscus. So I had surgery. That led to another surgery. That led to basically, a litany of knee problems that resulted in getting an artificial knee 2 years ago. And I was never really the same player after I went to LA. I just couldn't, I was getting older and I couldn't do the things I used to do. The great thing out of that trade was I met my wife, and so Cammie and I have been married almost 20 years now, and coming up 19 in September. But I guess if you dig hard enough, there's a silver lining to all of it. And Cammie became it in LA. I just loved it in LA, and that place has a special place in our hearts. That's for sure.
I guess as someone who's one of the few, really, like I really can't think of too many other than like Glenn Healy, like LaFontaine, like guys that have been on both sides of the Ranger Islander thing. Obviously we as fans, we don't like the other side. That comes with anything in sports. But as a player, do the rivalries the way the fans feel them? Do they take hold in that you genuinely do not like the players on the other side of rivalries like that? Kind of like what we're seeing right now in the Ranger Devil playoff series.
Okay, so a couple of things on that. One, I would say is when I was with the Islanders, we hated the Rangers way more than they hated us. And it was because they were better, and they viewed the Islander game as another game on the schedule. And I knew that from when I didn't know that until I went to the Rangers.
Yeah.
When I was with the Islanders, we had years we were not in the Rangers class, and that game was like a neon light on our schedule. Like we might not make the playoffs, but man, we want to stick something in the spokes of their bike. Like, we want to trip them up. And so it mattered more. I would say almost like a little brother, big brother thing. Like that's what it felt like at either side of the rivalry. The fans, I mean, everybody's so close and so intermingled, and there's not many Jets and Rangers fans. They're Jets and Islanders fans, right? There's Giants and Rangers fans. There's Yankees, Giants, and Rangers fans. There's not Yankees, Islanders. Like it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And when you come here, you start to realize that, and you're like, wow, this is a thing. Like this isn't just media. Oh, we don't like them and they don't like us. It was really interesting to go. You're Mets, Jets, Islanders. You're Rangers, Giants, Yankees, and there was very little of that.
Yeah, there's not. Look, obviously I'm biased, right? There's like the A teams and the B teams. Like it's just the way the city is.
Okay.
I have a little bit of bias in that way. I admit that when I say that. So you the last couple stops of your career, obviously you went to the trade. You went to LA. I love those Chevy jerseys. I'll never forget those. Yeah. You were part of the inaugural team in Atlanta, and then you ended up as a deadline deal with the Blues. When you went to Atlanta, you signed there as a free agent for the first year, that the team was in existence. The following year, you came back. You scored 29 goals that year, really productive year. And you spent most of the 3 years there before you went to the Blues. What was your experience like as a player on a brand new team, and not one that chose you? You kind of chose them. Like it wasn't like an expansion draft thing. Like you actually signed there. So what was that like for a brand new team? And from your experience, why do you think that the franchise just didn't work there long term? And should they get a third shot?
Well, okay. So as far as choosing it, I signed in August. Most free agents are signing much earlier. I had come off yet another knee surgery in LA. I think that at that time it was my fourth, and I knew I had a couple of options free agent wise that were 1-year deals. And I knew it was going to take me some time, like physically, to kind of get back whatever I was going to have left in the tank. I just knew it, right? Like in my training, I wasn't quite as sharp or as quick. And, like that became part of my focus, that if I sign a 1-year deal, I might be out of the league. So Atlanta offered a 2-year deal. Don Waddell was the general manager in Atlanta, who's now in Carolina. And my agent, who I was so lucky to have, Steve Bartlett, his son's now Brian is he's a pretty prominent agent now. He steered me towards the 2-way deal. And so I signed in Atlanta because I felt if I wanted to keep playing, I was going to need more time. The first year, honestly, if I ever get around to it, I'm going to write a book on it, because we won 14 games. Do you know how hard it is to win only 14 games?
It takes effort, right? You have to actually
It really does.
try hard to do that.
I think we had like 6 or 7 goalies that year. Nobody played goal for another franchise after they played in that year for Atlanta. We killed everybody. It was
funny.
It was so unbelievably bad. We went, I think, 20 games without a win. Now, there were ties back then, so maybe we would have weaseled one out somewhere. 20 without a win. We won in Colorado on the 20th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice. And
I know where you're going with this.
And so it was on all day in the locker room, all these retrospective things. And I scored in overtime and in Colorado. And I said, I know it's the 20th anniversary, but
yeah,
I mean, that was fine, but this is a miracle.
It's a miracle.
And when I got back to Atlanta, I have a message on my phone from Al Michaels, and I kept that message for years. The PR director in LA, who's just an amazing guy, his name's Mike Altieri. He's gone on to a bigger role with Anschutz Entertainment in LA. Al Michaels was a season ticket holder, so he knew, and he connected them, and Al left this message, and I thought it was just so awesome. But that first year, I'm telling you, Brian, you play a great game. You lose 4-2. The other team scores in the empty net. We're sitting at the back of the bus going to the airport, and you're like, nah, I don't think we could play any better than that. Like, what are we going to do? We lost again. On to the next one. And it was tough. Why it didn't work? Well, part of it is you won 14 games. They made the playoffs once in 10 years. Atlanta is a really interesting place. Where the arena is downtown, I don't even know if it's called Phillips Arena anymore, but that's where it was. It's not an easy place to get to. Like that, whatever urban sprawl is, take a picture of Atlanta and that's it. Like it's hard to get around. And are you going to spend money to go watch a team that you could reasonably expect to lose most nights? Not a chance. Should they get a third chance? Where the scuttlebutt talk is, it's a completely different area. It's where the Braves Stadium is. I think it's northeast of the city. Like it's a basically its own city outside of Atlanta. And so I couldn't tell you the dynamics or the logistics of how that all would work, but they say always follow the money. And if there's someone with deep enough pockets, then that's a chance. That's something the league would look at.
It boggles my mind though that Gary's just insistent on keeping a team in Arizona, and I get kind of concerned. Like, can you overexpand? Like, can you have too many teams at that point? And it's like you're keeping teams in markets that are struggling and just wanting to put new ones. I get it. That's financials. That's a business. I understand that.
Yeah. Well, but, I mean, could you have too many teams? Probably. I mean, how many times are teams looking for a third pair right-handed defenseman and they can't find one? Or how many teams are really comfortable with both of their goalies? And probably not a lot. And now if somebody gets hurt, where are you going to find another goalie? Like when I when I was playing, there was 21 teams. When I started, there's 42 goalies.
Yeah. Like
just 42. There was 84 centermen in the league. Now there's 128 minimum. And now there's 64 goalies. You get thin. I mean, players have to come from somewhere, and it's certainly a balancing act to think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I said. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're talking about. I know Weeks. He keeps breaking news. He's doing a wonderful job of that. He's talking about that. So, after your career, you got into broadcasting and you were with TSN for 14 years. Now, for those of us that are in the United States that don't really have an appreciation for what hockey is in the fabric of Canada, what's that like? Because it's not, I mean, look, I'm a huge hockey fan. I am, not necessarily everybody, but Canada, it's everything.
It's the NFL multiplied, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think we have 38 million people in Canada. The World Junior Tournament that is every Christmas is a tradition that, has really been built around the work TSN has done with it, to publicize it, to expand it, to grow it. We did a gold medal game. I want to say it was 2015. At the time, Canada was about 33 million people, and 7 million people watched it. Like those are beyond Super Bowl percentages. It's crazy. And everywhere you go, there's no sport that competes with hockey. There's, you're in a supermarket, you're in a line for a coffee, you're in anywhere, it's hockey. Mm-hmm. To this point, I'm driving in Vancouver one time where I live. There's a thing at a light. This guy kind of sort of cuts in front of me, and I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And guy rolls down his window and he goes, "Come on, Ray." And I was like, "Whoa." Like it was instructive that everybody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoops, maybe I should kind of keep that a little tighter. If I've got anger behind the wheel. So it's just, I just loved, I love doing those games of prominence. It's such a, like, emotionally you connect to the game so deeply. My play-by-play partner for a dozen years in Canada was Gord Miller. We probably did 700 games together. And, we were fortunate enough outside of the Stanley Cup final to do, as important the games as you could. We did Maple Leaf games during the season and the World Junior Tournament at Christmas. And it was, it was a great run. And so when ESPN came around, I thought I could do both. And Brian, it turned out I just couldn't. We have, Cammie and I have a 16 and a 13-year-old pair of boys. And there comes a point, I think, where I looked at, I'm like, what the hell am I doing, man? Like, I'm missing stuff at home here. I'm like stuff it was starting to really pull at me that maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. And so I stepped away from TSN, and I feel way more connected to home, way more grounded. And I'm in the right place.
I really think truly, like when ESPN ABC got the contract and you started seeing some of the names that they were bringing in, I felt like you really legitimized their coverage. I mean, like you need to bring in guys who know the sport that have done this for a while to really kind of get it off the ground, so that you're not the Thrashers, right? Like you're not like you bring in the right guys to get it started. So I mean, just kudos to you. You've done a really great job.
Thank you.
It was kind of funny. So we were both at the game last night, obviously, and I took a picture of you from my seat. Like, I know that guy, and literally, it's like 2 seconds for the opening face-off, and you're responding to me like, "Hey, great seats."
Yeah, well, you got to stay in touch, right? Like,
yeah, no, that was too funny.
And like, was great. I do check. Here's maybe a little truth of things. I do check Twitter during games. There are. I don't check. I'm not scrolling and reading everything, but every once in a while, somebody will point something out. Like, it's impossible to catch everything. Somebody might say something and you go, "Oh, I didn't see that." So I'll ask the truck, "Hey, did we get an angle of XYZ?" And they're like, "That's not a good angle. That's why you didn't get it." And so like that, like stuff like that happens. It's interesting. I see your text pop up, and I'm like, what the heck? Oh man, you're sitting right there. Those are great seats.
Yeah. My seats are in the last row of the lower level, so you can stand up, which is nice. Like you're right.
That's a good spot. Hey,
yeah,
you're just high enough that you get a good vision and not too high. And I did tweet. I got to say this: there is an energy. You people that go to the Garden maybe don't appreciate it as much because you're there all the time. But walking into that place 2 hours before the game, it's dark. The lighted seat things are on. There's an energy that you feel just walking into that place. And then when the Rangers come out and it's just the best. There's you always piss off people in other buildings when
Sure.
when I say like there's an energy around MSG like nowhere else. The only other place I can think of that's close is the Bell Center in Montreal. Like there's just you just feel it kind of in your bones when you're in there. And I get the best place. I'm standing right there. Another secret about MSG, you know what else is good about there? The glove dryers from both teams are right behind me. It's kind of warm. I like it. Most places is cold. This is a good place.
That's funny. I know we're getting close to time, but I want your thoughts on the series. So obviously disappointing loss last night. But I think the Rangers played poorly. I don't know that the goaltending change was that big. I mean, I didn't think Vanacek played terribly in the first two games. Mm-hmm. Like the Rangers were just opportunistic. So I don't know if it was like a wake up the team call for Lindy or whatnot. But I mean, look, it's a different series today than it was,
sure,
12 hours ago, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm operating on 5 hours sleep. I had a long ride home. Just what's your thought? I mean, your concern on the power play, which I thought was valid, was that you have too many guys. Basically, you got to kind of make it work. They seem to have done that at least at the onset in the series. So now that it's 2-1, just what's your read on them? I mean, is this a team that like are we cheerleading if we say they can win it all, or do they have a legitimate shot?
Well, I said just before the playoffs, the Rangers are so interesting to me. Because the way they collected the types of players they did at the deadline, it's either going to work or it's going to fail spectacularly. Like one of the two things is going to happen. I think they're really good. My concern is the pace that they can play at. Will they get caught with a team that's way faster, that takes away all their ice? Now, last night, the power play was 0 for 5. Zibanejad had 3 one-timers that if he gets those one-timers again, he's going to score one of them. Like he's not going to miss 3 times. I thought Akira Schmid was terrific. He made those 3 saves on Zibanejad. He stopped Kane on through a screen, really difficult left pad save. Panarin had the breakaway. I couldn't tell. He was down at your end. Did he miss the net or
I thought he missed the net? Yeah, he tried to go glove side high. And he just missed it.
So there's 5 chances that if they get again, they're going to score. And that's in a game I didn't think Adam Fox had a real impact on the game like he usually does. So sometimes you just lose. Like I thought the Devils played much better. They were much quicker. I thought Jesper Bratt was the best player on the ice last night. He had a couple assists, made the beautiful pass to Dougie Hamilton on the game winner. I thought Schmid was a real difference maker. Didn't face 50 shots or anything, but he gave them a calmness in the net that Vanacek wasn't able to. And I think if you marry those two things, the Devils playing better and him being more calm, it gave the Devils a better feel. Like they must feel way better about themselves today than they did yesterday. I still am looking at this series and I think the Rangers have too much for them. I really do. That would get you into a second round series, which always start to get a little dicey because now you're down to 8 teams. Now you're down to the very best teams. The next team they're going to play, if they get by the Devils, more likely than not will defend really well. And that's where I worry about their pace of play? Can you move them around quick enough to get your guys the chances they need? One line I thought was really quiet last night in game 2 or game 3 was the Hedel line. That line needs to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And they can and have shown that they are better. They had a really quiet night last night. And that should be an area of depth that the Rangers, you would give them a favorable mark on.
New York fans are not necessarily known for their patience. I'll leave it.
That's pretty true.
Yeah. So, they had first overall pick, second overall pick, and there's always people like, oh, you got to get rid of Kakko, got to get rid of Lafreniere, so on and so forth. And I think that's ridiculous. They're very much in the same Matty Nordstrom type of thought process there. But I think the people that want to label Lafreniere and Kakko as quote unquote busts, I think that they're not seeing the forest for the trees. And I say that because usually guys that get picked 1-2 overall, they go to pretty terrible teams and they end up in, top 6 minutes, power play time. And, this is not where that is. I mean, they came to a team with the Panarins and the Kreiders and the Zibanejas of the world that you're just not going to be bestowed top 6 times. So from your vantage point, what do you say to Ranger fans who are just impatient to all hell? I mean, like the idea that like these 22, 21-year-old kids need to be Connor McDavid reincarnated immediately.
Right.
Just your thoughts on that.
Well, I would say both players, my projection to them would be second line players, not first line players. My projections, as I look at them, are that they're moving in a direction you can see clearly as positive. Now, I was looking at a couple things with Lafreniere yesterday. He started the year 1 goal in 20, finished the year 2 goals in 18. In the middle was a really good stretch of hockey, like a 24, 25 goal pace. So now the trick for him is next year, that pace extrapolates over the season. Like he's already had his stepping stone years. It's now time to grow.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for the Rangers, and I'll get to Kakko in a second, is you have to start making financial decisions on these players. And that's why in a lot of cases, it's not beneficial to have them in the lineup when they're 18 and 19 years old, because they burn through their entry-level contracts too quickly. Then you have to make a real decision. Do you bridge them? And in that bridge year, what if they score 32 goals? Oops. Now their pay is out of what you can pay in your cap. They've got long-term commitments here to really good players. So the growth is there. It's what do you project them to be and how long can you wait for it? That's what Lafreniere. Kakko to me is it will both always be complementary players. I don't think they're going to be standalone top line players, but Kakko is heavy. He's his feet are a little heavy, and that's what's going to hold him out of being, in my opinion, a top line player. But he can be your secondary winger on top lines because he's got really good hands. He's strong. He can get to the net. Like I think they're real play. Like I'll say they're real players. They're not just guys in your lineup. But man, it is hard to wait. I get it, because the Rangers are at a different level. They want to wait. The management wants to be patient, but they kind of need them to be good now.
Yeah.
It's
the patient management was kicked out. Actually, they were let go. The patient management was let go. Actually, they're no longer around.
Right. They're out. And so, but now you're in a point, like you started and said, or we got somewhere in here. Are they a legit cup contender? They are. Well, that means, guys, we need you to outkick your contract here.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was, way back in the day, the Ducks won the cup, and Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf were on their entry-level contracts. They totally outkicked their contract, and that allowed them to have players like Pronger and Niedermeyer and pay them at a level that afforded them to that they could afford because they had these guys making whatever the league minimum was at the time. So you need players like that. Colorado had Bo Byram last year, right? Like you need players to outkick their dollar value. Philip Hedl did it in the playoffs last year. And at some point that line needs to be not just a support line. And I think they can be, but, and I, it's not far away, but of course the Rangers and their fans would like it to be like last Thursday.
I mean, listen, I was 10 in 1994, right? I'm 39 now. So like, it wasn't like yesterday. I know sometimes it feels like yesterday, but it definitely was not.
Okay. So here because I know there's a portion of Ranger fans that just, I'm so beloved with.
Yeah.
I'm a Red Sox fan. Okay.
Ooh, all right.
Okay. So the reason I tell you this is in 1975, I'm 11 years old. I'm going that year to the Little League World Series. My team wins the Canadian Championship from our little town in Canada, and we go to the World Series. The Red Sox have these two rookies, Jim Rice and Fred Lynn, and I was just captivated by them. I was a Bobby Orr fan, and so I was kind of watching Boston as much as you could watch. I was in Trail, BC, which is as far away from Boston as you could get, and I connected with the Red Sox. I didn't realize what I was doing, that it was going to be 30 years until, here you are. We were kind of the same age space, right? Yeah. And you're like, you're just a fan, and you're like, oh yeah, it wasn't that long ago. And then at some point you go, what the hell? It's forever.
My dad told me that he was my age when they won in 94. So like
it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. Like,
look, how could that be?
The Ranger fans say that's why you hate the Rangers now, because you're a Red Sox fan. So let's go Yankees. That must be where it comes.
I got to tell you, being since they won their last title, it's been trying times watching what they're doing in Boston.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I don't think a big market like can play. You can't play Moneyball in a big city. I don't think
it's just if Mookie Betts playing for the Dodgers drives a stake in my heart. I'm like, of all the guys, him? Like, and now I watch Xander Bogaerts in San Diego, and I'm like, I get the contracts are too long and too much money and all that, but now you're going to spend 10 years looking for those two players. And you're not going to find them.
Yeah. Certain players you just fall in love with. And like you share with me that Brian Leetch was the best player you ever played with.
Oh, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
I got to say before I go here, Leachy was so good. I remember playing against him and go, man, that guy's really good. And there's certain things that stick in your mind. Before the Garden was renovated, the Ranger bench was where it is now. There was an angle to the bench you couldn't really see in the left corner. If you can imagine that from the bench, you couldn't see down there. Puck I always remember this. Puck got chipped down in that corner. Leachy goes back to get it. There's a guy coming down the boards and a guy coming from the middle. There's nowhere to go. And a second later, Leachy comes skating out of the corner with the puck straight up the middle of the ice. I have no idea how he got out of there. His agility, his speed, his strength, his passing. He was the best player I ever played with. Talent-wise, it would have been Alex Kovalev, but Brian Leetch was just an amazing, amazing player.
I mentioned to you, I said we see a little bit of see a little bit of Leetch and Foxy. Said, yeah, but Brian was a magician.
My God, he could do things that were just like I got a goal one time. We were in Vancouver. I was standing at the corner of the net, and Leachy went down the boards on the other side, and he came across the goal line, and the guy got his stick between Brian's feet and kind of turned him sideways, and he kept his balance and somehow passed it. I just shot it in the net. I was just standing there. I'm like, where's he going? Oh, and I just shot it in the net. Like it was amazing. Amazing. And there could not be, if you tried to find a more humble guy than Brian Leetch. Just the best.
Well, that's cool. I know we're at time. Listen, thank you very much. I had a blast talking to you. You know, by all means, if you ever want to come back on, I would love to have you again. This was a lot of fun.
What about round 3 if they get there? We'll do it again.
There you go. That's like I said, I hope that I mentioned to you in my second tweet. I said I hope our fan base is complaining about you all the way through mid-June, because that means there's a reason for it.
I want to leave with this. I want to be really clear. And if people are watching, I want to be really clear. I don't care. I don't care who wins. You know what I cheer for? No overtime and the best game that I can watch. I am so privileged to do what I do. Like, to stand between the benches and broadcast these games is the best. But I don't care who wins. I was thrilled to do the Rangers run last year. I think I did 15 games. It was amazing. Amazing. I got to do Colorado games. Unbelievable. But I don't care who wins. I really don't. And I hope the Rangers do well. I hope the games are good. And I hope they end in regulation. That's what I'm cheering for.
Yeah, that was so the game got done. I had to wait a half hour for a train to get to Jersey and then drive 2 hours. So I didn't get home until 2:30 in the morning. That's all right. It's all worth
it. That's a tough one. But will you be back tomorrow?
So I don't have the rest of the games this series. Hopefully, if they do advance, I'll get into the series in the second round. So we'll see how that goes.
I know you'll be watching, so enjoy. Yes. And to all Ranger fans watching here, thanks for the time and peace. I hope you're all well and everyone in your world as well.
Ray, thank you. Take care, everybody.
Brian, pleasure.